Hello and welcome to the Summer Thunder vlog. In this video I wanted to have a look at what I would consider to be identifiable Satanic philosophy as it manifested in the 20th century, which I think has been a key time really. Now what I'm going to actually look at is Liber Legis, the Book of the Law, which is the document which Crowley published and which he claimed to have received from an entity called Awas, who he identified with Set and Satan. So it's for this reason that I consider this to qualify as a source Satanic document. But also I think it's actually very unlikely that Anton LaVey wasn't heavily influenced by Aleister Crowley and also by the Book of the Law. And in fact, if you look at the Satanic Bible and the Book of the Law, you'll find that quite a number of their teachings and points are really very much in harmony. So I do think that Liber Legis is a good starting point if you want to have something that you can actually look at to see what is the nature of Satanic philosophy. So I will just go through a number of different quotations, quite a lot of quotations, and see if we can draw some philosophical conclusions from it. Every man and every woman is a star. Now this sets the tone for a key concept of individual sovereignty, and this is very much the core of Thelemic teaching and also of Satanic philosophy in many ways. Let my servants be few and secret, they shall rule the many and the known. This shows a principle of spiritual elitism and discrimination in Satanism. It's not numbers or fame that are valued, but effectiveness, and effectiveness is better served by quality, which is in opposition to mass phenomena, most essentially by nature it tends to be. So that's how it tends to go. So there is a sort of something of an elitist quality to Satanism, or certainly you could say a non-mass quality. And or it says they shall rule the many and the known. I think this and this whole thing about being few and secret, I think the seclusion and the privacy implied by that point to the occult quality of Satanism. This is the creation of the world, that the pain of division is as nothing, and the joy of dissolution all. Now, in this verse there is a recognition of the suffering in life, but the joy of life is viewed as the primary quality, and this is the positive orientation of Satanism towards existence, which is not to deny hardship and suffering, but to value joy and fulfillment above the suffering. For these fools of men and their woes care not thou at all. They feel little. What is balanced by weak joys, but ye are my chosen ones. Now here, I think the Christian and Buddhist ideas of universal compassion are essentially rejected. There's no saving the whole world from themselves, and the indication here is that we shouldn't try. On the other hand, there isn't actually a suggestion of cruelty or callousness, but really of living truly oneself. There is also the implication here of a satanic communion, so to speak, of those chosen by Satan. So I think that does come in there. The word of the law is Thelema. Now the key concept of Crowley's work is Thelema, which is a Greek term which can be translated as will, volition, or as work in the sense of a chore, an errand, or a job to do. I think this indicates an emphasis on the capacity to do in relation to what one wills and intends, and to work. And it indicates expenditure of energy against a resistance to bring about an envisioned result. So it is this sense of the power of work. The word of sin is restriction, O man. Refuse not thy wife, if she will. O lover, if thou wilt depart. There is no bond that can unite the divided but love. All else is a curse. Accursed be it to the aeons, hell. Now this is one of many verses that have a libertarian slant, focusing on authenticity and honesty and the throwing off of false strictures. This doesn't advise carelessness, but truthfulness with self and others in relations. So it points to honesty and freedom. I am the flame that burns in every heart of man and in the core of every star. I am life and the giver of life, yet therefore is the knowledge of me the knowledge of death. Now here Satan declares his essential identity with the core of every person and with the deep processes of the universe also. Now this, in some senses, provides a theological underpinning to the principle of individual sovereignty, which is here indicated as being universal among human beings. And sometimes we call this the gift of Set, and sometimes we call it the black flame. Remember, all ye, that existence is pure joy, that all the sorrows are but as shadows. They pass and are done, but there is that which remains. Again, we have an affirmation of life as essentially joyful. It's not necessarily easy, it's not without suffering, but the core and purpose of life is nevertheless joy. Always the strength of spirit is seen to be upheld in Satanism. Hear me, ye people of sighing. The sorrows of pain and regret are left to the dead and the dying, the folk that not know me as yet. Now, here we see that Satan, the devil, is known by some and not by others, and a different attitude to life is expected of the devil's folk. Pain and regret are not to be dwelt upon. These are the dead, these fellows, they feel not. We are not for the poor and the sad. The lords of the earth are our kinsfolk. Again, sadness is not to be dwelt upon. The lords of the earth here, I think, it's unlikely that these simply mean those who happen to be powerful and famous, because they can clearly be as troubled and weak in spirit as any. The lords of the earth are more likely to be those who are noble in spirit and rich in vitality, unself-denying, lovers of life, strong and undiscouraged by the difficulties of life. And some of these may be amongst the powerful and the rich and the strong, but that's not really what I think this essentially refers to. It's referring to a quality of spirit, as far as I can see. We have nothing with the outcast and the unfit. Let them die in their misery. They feel not. Compassion is the vice of kings. Stamp down the wretched and the weak. This is the law of the strong. This is our law and the joy of the world. Think not, O king, upon that lie, that thou must die. Verily thou shalt not die, but live. Now let it be understood, if the body of the king dissolve, he shall remain in pure ecstasy for ever. Nuit, hadit, rahul chuit. The sun, strength and sight, light, these are for the servants of the star and snake. Now again in this verse, universal compassion is repudiated and the law of nature is affirmed, the law of survival. Naturally, this doesn't cover everything in life, but the principle of serving and valuing strength rather than weakness is seen as very important. This doesn't negate compassion and love for our loved ones, but it rejects the entire moral superstructure of religions such as Christianity and Buddhism as not just insufficient but hazardous for the free individual. And now the wretchedness and weakness here appears as a malfunction of the spirit, I think. For these verses predominantly refer to qualities of spirit, yet it is a weakness which attempts to reify itself in a doctrine of universal weakness and dependence, and this is what is really rejected here. I am the snake that giveth knowledge and delight and bright glory, and stir the hearts of men with drunkenness. To worship me, take wine and strange drugs, whereof I will tell my prophet, and be drunk thereof. That shall not harm ye at all. It is a lie, this folly against self. The exposure of innocence is a lie. Be strong, O man, lust, enjoy all things of sense and rapture. Fear not that any god shall deny thee for this. Now here Satan presents himself as the enlightening and inspiring serpent, and he invites humans to experience and explore pleasure and knowledge. This of course doesn't preclude responsibility for natural consequences, but it repudiates the supposed virtue of eternal safety and avoidance of the experience of life. Satan rather is that which leads us to life and leads us to experience and knowledge. I am alone, there is no God where I am. In this very short verse, singularity is emphasized and monotheism is repudiated. If this were not spoken by a God, then we might take this to be a reference to atheism, but as it is, it questions the conventional monotheistic conception of theism. But this singularity is emphasized here, and it maybe hints at the God, capital G, being a projection of self. Beware lest any force another, king against king. Love one another with burning hearts, on the low men trample, in the fierce lust of your pride, in the day of your wrath. That is actually part of a verse. Now I think what this indicates is that Satanists should respect one another as equals and not interfere in each other's work. The low men I take to mean those who abase themselves before such things as monotheistic morality, collective consensus, dependency, weakness of spirit. These are those who truly oppose Satan's gift of free will and sovereign selfhood. From a Satanic point of view, the sickness which these suffer from is not to be validated or to be engaged with. Ye are against the people, O my chosen. Here we see that Satanism is not a populist religion and cannot be. The apparent elitism of Satanism is a natural consequence of the physics of self-actualization, so to speak. And in this sense, we are incompatible with the crowd, the collective, the mass consensus. That's just how things are. There is great danger in me, for who doth not understand these runes shall make a great miss. He shall fall down into the pit called Because, and there he shall perish with the dogs of reason. Now a curse upon Because and his kin. May Because be accursed forever. If will stops and cries why, invoking Because, then will stops and does naught. If power asks why, then is power weakness. Also reason is a lie, for there is a factor infinite and unknown, and all their words are skew-wise. Enough of Because, be he damned for a dog. Here in these verses we see the limitations and pitfalls of reason being warned against. And we should remember that Thelema refers to will which can lead to work, to action, in whatever sense. Now, there is nothing ineffective in the essence of Satanism. It is very practical, even where it's a cult. Reason and the discursive mind are here assessed as being capable of misapplication, and this misapplication can spoil work. I think it's quite easy to see what this is about in a way. Reason has its place, but when it comes to be the time to act and the time to do, when action and execution are required, whether that's physical or otherwise, it must be nothing but these. There's a need for a certain purity in that discipline. And power here can be understood as the capacity for work. In terms of magic also, true causations cannot be grasped by reason, for so much lies within the purview of what we term the unconscious. So we have to be aware that when it comes to the time to actually act and do, then we need to have sorted things out already that we needed to reason, and we need to just get on with work at that point. Dost thou fail? Art thou sorry? Is fear in thine heart? Where I am, these are not. What these two verses say is that despair is not for Satanists. Whatever one has been through or is experiencing, despair is not for us. And in this, there's also a promise, for Satan is saying that he is the banisher of despair and sorrow here. Pity not the fallen, I never knew them. I am not for them, I console not, I hate the consoled and the consoler. Here again, yet again, we have a repudiation of the conventional sense of compassion. This does not preclude love and concern for loved ones or one's dear friends, or sympathy for those we care about who are going through difficult times. These are natural animal responses, but universal compassion and the elevation of suffering, victimhood and salvation of a strength and the will to live and fight, this is rejected. There is a veil. That veil is black. It is the veil of the modest woman. It is the veil of sorrow and the pall of death. This is none of me. Tear down that lying spectre of the centuries. Veil not your vices in virtuous words. These vices are my service. Ye do well, and I will reward you here and hereafter. In this verse, the morality of self-denial is repudiated again, and the entire edifice of displayed virtue and condemned vice is rejected. The hypocrisy of appearing other than what you are for the sake of moral opinions is condemned. And referring to modesty, this verse seems to especially refer to pride, attraction and sexual expression, though a broader interpretation is also likely indicated. Honesty about one's genuine nature is of service to Satan, and the vices so often condemned by collective moral systems such as Christianity, Islam or Buddhism are recognized as satanic virtues, whether in essence and development or literally simply so. The rewards of these virtues are promised here and beyond this life. Yea, deem not of change. Ye shall be as ye are, and not other. Therefore the kings of the earth shall be kings for ever, the slaves shall serve. There is none that shall be cast down or lifted up. All is ever as it was. Yet there are masked ones, my servants. It may be that yonder beggar is a king. A king may choose his garment as he will. There is no certain test, but a beggar cannot hide his poverty. This is a very interesting verse. For it deals with the very unfashionable concept of fate. And what it basically says is that people do not essentially change. Their natures remain what they have always been in essence. People may, of course, change their conditions and express themselves differently. They may enrich themselves, they may fulfill their potential, and they may go through processes of growth, but their basic nature does not change. In this sense, a Satanist is born rather than made. Yet we do have choices, and there may be ways of expressing any one essential quality. But our essential qualities cannot truly be hidden or escaped. And I think that's what this verse is basically saying. Beware therefore, love all, lest perchance a king is concealed. Say so you? Fool, if he be a king, thou canst not hurt him. Therefore strike hard and low, and to hell with them, master. Now here again, the theoretical justifications of universal compassion are rejected. Rather than ensure against treading on a king in disguise, it suggests that we let the unknown be tested. It's not to say that a Satanist should go around kicking everything just to test it, but it's not your job to think the best of everything just in case, to tiptoe around things. No, just do your work. Don't be obstructed, and you can let others prove their worth. Now let it be first understood that I am a God of war and vengeance. I shall deal hardly with them. Now here Satan declares himself to be a martial god by nature. Satanism entails a kind of war in a sense, even if it entails much else besides. And this is why Satanism cannot be assimilated into a postmodern ecumenicalism or some kind of universal interfaith. Satanism isn't like that, and Satan isn't like that. It has a job to do, and it's not going to be assimilated into that kind of universal interfaith. Fear not at all, fear neither men, nor fates, nor gods, nor anything. Money fear not, nor laughter of the folk folly, nor any other power in heaven or upon the earth or under the earth. New is your refuge, as had it your light, and I am the strength, force, vigour of your arms. Now, Satanism works by deposing fear, which is the primary binder of human beings. And we are bid not to fear. And this, in a sense, is the spiritual revolution of Satanism. For we are told to not fear the negative sacred cows of any age. Whether it's the question of money or ridicule or any sort of power which might be used against us, we are bid to laugh at these things joyously and go our own way. Even if it seems like madness to the world, we are told to laugh at these things and go our own way and not fear. Mercy be let off, damn them who pity, kill and torture, spare not, be upon them. Again, compassion is repudiated, and even ruthlessness is advised. Now, naturally, this does not preclude responsibility for the consequences of anybody's actions, in word or deed. That's always so. We have to take responsibility for our actions. We have to take responsibility for our freedom. But these are things which every Satanist has to determine for themselves. No one has the right to obstruct your work, and in the same sense, you do not have the right to actually interfere in the course of any who do not interfere with you. I am in a secret fourfold word, the blasphemy against all gods of men. Curse them, curse them, curse them. With my hawk's head I peck at the eyes of Jesus as he hangs upon the cross. I flap my wings in the face of Muhammad and blind him. With my claws I tear out the flesh of the Indian and the Buddhist, Mongol and Din. Bahlasti on Peda, I spit on your crapulous creeds. The creeds of all the major world religions are rejected very roundly by Satan, and they and we are inimical to each other. We don't mix, and we can't be reconciled. They are to be seen as disastrous to the free individual, and we have to be quite uncompromising on that. I think this is the basic message here. Let Mary inviolate be torn upon wheels. For her sake let all chaste women be utterly despised among you, also for beauty's sake and love's. Now the message seems to be the forceful rejection of anti-sexual teachings here, and also the rejection of the deforming of people's lives by the morality of sexual and erotic denial. So Satanism is very pro-sexual and pro-sex. Despise also all cowards, professional soldiers who dare not fight but play. All fools despise, but the keen and the proud, the royal and the lofty, ye are brothers, as brothers fight ye. Now, what this is saying in this verse is to be what you truly are, with courage and authenticity. Don't pretend to be what you aren't. Be honest, and have courage, and in that there is pride and nobility. It's also shown here that conflict doesn't actually need to be avoided, most especially if it's clean and honest, because true kin remain kin even when they fight. An honest fight with respect will be forgotten, and even a source of shared strength. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Now here again is one of the central dictums of Thelema. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. And we can note here that in this verse the word do is capitalized in the middle of the sentence, and this indicates the primacy of action, of doing. The law is predicated upon having found one's true will, one's true course based upon one's essential nature, and upon doing that will. The only law is to do your real work. Now, in summary, I would say that Liber Legis presents a teaching which is libertarian and individualistic, at its core, and which is practical and discriminating. It emphasizes effectiveness and the affirmation of life, and the execution of intentional work determined by the individual. The spiritual conventions of the modern age are largely rejected as empty and hypocritical, especially universal compassion, victimhood, and salvation, however these may manifest themselves. Honesty is greatly prized, and sexuality is highly valued. Pain and suffering in life are not denied, but accepted stoically and overcome with strength and courage. The law of nature and survival is recognized and respected as the basis of life. One can also see that monotheism is roundly rejected as a sickness and a source of sickness by Satanism here. The philosophy of Satanism is anti-collectivist and anti-mass consensus simply by its nature, and this philosophy can be seen to be both antagonistic to what actively opposes it, but at the same time it is also based upon a non-interference. So it's not a philosophy of picking fights, but it's a philosophy of maybe finishing the fights which are started with you, in a sense. But the most essential thing, but the principle of non-interference is very, very important there, yeah, because everything does have its true course, and everything has the right to follow its true course. So the important thing is to be true to yourself and to not interfere with others, and to not let others interfere with you. Now, if we make a further comparison with the Satanic Bible, we get the same philosophy, but with a few added emphases maybe. Moral autonomy is further clarified, while the entire superstructure of right-hand path mysticism is rejected. Satanism is also asserted as a religion of balance as well as of nature, and indulgence is brought more to the fore as a virtue in itself in the Satanic Bible. Now, is this philosophy that we see presented here, is it complete and comprehensive as a way of life and religion? I'd say no, it isn't really. It's more of a proto-philosophy. It's a start. I think to complete it, we need to do deeper work both philosophically and religiously to give our religion the abiding basis that it needs. But the key points are worth remembering: liberty, individual sovereignty, moral autonomy, strength, work, self-responsibility, repudiation of monotheistic spirituality and its influence in the post-Christian world. Thank you very much.